The suspicious death of William Young, uncovering a Sundown town cover-up in Peru, Illinois. In the quiet town of Peru, Illinois, a sinister story of deception and potential racial violence unfolded in September 2018, shrouded in the shadows of a history that many would prefer to forget. William Young, a 40-year-old father, met a tragic and mysterious end in the woods of LaSalle County, a place with a dark and uneasy past. His lifeless body was discovered hanging from a tree, a haunting image reminiscent of the lynchings that once terrorized black communities in sundown towns across America. The local police were quick to label William's death as a suicide, dismissing any need for further investigation. But the details surrounding his death were far from ordinary, and the actions of the LaSalle County Police Department only deepened the mystery, hinting at something far more sinister, a potential cover-up of a racially motivated murder, perhaps even with police involvement. William Young, affectionately known as Boo by those who loved him, was a beloved figure in his community. He was a preacher, a family man, and a dedicated worker who had just signed the lease on a new house the day before his death. This was a man excited about his future, not someone who would abandon his family in such a brutal and final way. But the official narrative crafted by the police suggested otherwise, and the rush to close the case raised alarms among his family and friends. On the evening of September 18, 2018, William called his daughter after finishing a late shift driving for Uber. He was upset that he couldn't pick up his younger daughter from school due to his work schedule, but he reassured his family that he had one last Uber ride to complete before visiting a friend in another city. That call would be the last time anyone in his family heard from him. The next day, William's family received a devastating phone call. His body had been found hanging from a tree in the woods of LaSalle County. The police quickly declared it a suicide, claiming that William had attempted to kill himself in 4 different ways before allegedly deciding to hang himself with jumper cables from his car, a 2016 Nissan Altima. They said he drank Windex, tried to block the tailpipes of his car with his clothing, and took prescription pills. Finally, they claimed he climbed a tree, tied the jumper cables around his neck, and ended his life. This explanation was immediately met with skepticism from William's family. Nothing about it made sense. William had just secured a new home, and his last conversation with his daughter showed no signs of despair or suicidal intent. The details provided by the police were suspicious, to say the least. The police told the family that William had died at 7 a.m., but later it was revealed that he had actually died around 4 a.m., 3 hours earlier. Even more disturbingly, the police had moved his body and performed an autopsy without notifying the family first. When the family arrived at the scene, they were not allowed to view William's body, further fueling their suspicions that something was being hidden. The condition of William's car added to the mystery. The passenger side was damaged, as if it had been rammed by another vehicle, but this detail was not disclosed by the police. Inside the car, there was evidence of a struggle. Grass was found in the back seat, cigarette butts were scattered around, and William's belongings were strewn everywhere. Yet despite these signs of foul play, the police refused to investigate further. They even declined to contact Uber to find out who William's last passenger was, a crucial piece of information that could have provided leads. The most chilling aspect of this case was the police's insistence on a swift burial. They threatened to cremate William's remains if the family didn't find a funeral home immediately, forcing them to make hasty decisions at a time of overwhelming grief. The family wanted a thorough investigation, but they were pressured into burying William quickly to avoid further mistreatment of his body by the authorities. This rush to bury him, coupled with the refusal to allow a private autopsy, seemed like a deliberate attempt to destroy any remaining evidence and silence any questions about what really happened. In the days following William's death, the local media barely covered the story. Only one news article was published, and it shockingly omitted critical details, such as the fact that William was found hanging from a tree. Instead, The article falsely claimed he was found lying on the ground in a random spot, further distorting the truth and downplaying the horrific nature of his death. As the family grappled with their loss, they couldn't shake the feeling that the police were hiding something, perhaps even that they were involved in William's death. The idea that William, a black man, was lynched in a modern-day sundown town like Peru, Illinois, was terrifying, but it seemed increasingly likely as more details emerged. The history of racial violence in such towns, where black people were warned to leave by sunset or face violent consequences, was not something of the distant past. The reluctance of the police to investigate, their resistance to a private autopsy, and the rush to bury William all pointed to a cover-up. The case became even more troubling when just a few years later, another black man, Jelani Day, was found dead under similarly suspicious circumstances in the same county. Jelani, a 25-year-old graduate student, went missing in August 2021, and his body was found decomposing in a river near Peru. The police quickly labeled his death as a self-inflicted drowning, despite the disturbing nature of the case and the fact that no suspects were ever apprehended. The parallels between the two cases were impossible to ignore, and they suggested a pattern of racial violence being swept under the rug by the very people who were supposed to protect the community. William Young's family was left with more questions than answers. Why would a man who had just signed a lease on a new house and was excited about his future suddenly decide to kill himself in such a brutal and unusual way? Why would a black man with a serious back injury climb a tree to hang himself? Why was his car suddenly damaged, and why did the police refuse to disclose this information? Why were they so determined to bury him quickly without allowing the family to see his body or conduct their own investigation? The answers to these questions remain elusive, but the implications are terrifying. The possibility that William was lynched and that the police were either complicit in the crime or actively covering it up is a stark reminder of the deep-seated racism that still exists in some parts of America. The fact that two black men died under suspicious circumstances in the same county within a few years of each other suggests that this is not an isolated incident, but rather part of a larger pattern of racial violence being concealed by those in power. As the Black Lives Matter movement gained momentum across the country, William's family felt they could no longer stay silent. They needed justice for William, and they needed the world to know what had happened to him. The fight for justice was not just about uncovering the truth of what happened to William, but about challenging the systemic racism that allowed such horrors to occur in the first place. The story of William Young is a tragic reminder that the legacy of sundown towns is not a thing of the past, but a present reality for many black Americans. The police's actions in this case, rushing to close the investigation, suppressing evidence, and pressuring the family to bury William quickly, suggest a concerted effort to hide the truth and protect the perpetrators of this heinous crime. But William's family refused to let his death be forgotten, and their quest for justice continues, shining a light on the dark corners of America's past that still haunt us today.
Thank you for joining us on this important journey. Our channel is dedicated to exposing secret sundown towns and racial crimes happening in 2024, shedding light on the dark corners of injustice and uncovering the truth. We're committed to bringing you top-quality content every Sunday. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay tuned and be part of the fight for justice.